Good afternoon, everybody. Zach Shelley here with another awesome episode of Management Unfiltered. I'm Zach Shelley, and I have Kirk Teachout here, and I'm not letting him talk yet because I have a fun subject that he doesn't even know about. And so Kirk, what you told me to say, I'm going to say here in just a second, but I'm going to put you on this stand now to testify on this subject. So may the odds be ever in your favor. So what we're going to talk about today, and I have Kirk really nervous because I love it, and he did this to me the last couple episodes of putting me under the gun and put some fire under my seat. We're going to talk about today what nobody warned you about.
Okay.
As a practice manager, as a dentist, as a practice owner, and I think this will work really well because you kind of cover those facets, right, Kirk? Your wife own a practice together, but you also are a practice manager. So there's a lot of things that you have to deal with day in and day out, and there's a lot of things that you just didn't know about that you had to deal with, and big pain points that I think we could help a lot of these owners and managers maybe weed through and bring some clarity to, or maybe they're not alone in that. So I'm going to ask you first, what's one thing that you felt you were blown away coming in because you have the same outside history of dental before, right? So you're a musician, and so you kind of came into dentistry a little bit more blind than most people. What's one thing that surprised you that nobody even told you about in dentistry that you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that?
That's interesting. And this kind of piggybacks off of what we talked about last time too. What would we do different knowing what we know now? But now it's like no one warned me about this. So I kind of like this. It's a different approach. I think the biggest surprise for me was how much of a punching bag the doctor is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're completely right. Why do you think that is, Kirk? Let's break this down. Why do you think? Because some of it's self-inflicted. I'm going to be the first to say it. I think a lot of it's actually self-inflicted, but I think there's a lot more that goes deeper into that of why doctors become the punching bag. So let's dive into this first of deeper of like, why do you think that is? What have you observed? Your wife's a dentist, so you're able to see that. You're able to hear a lot more of the full story of everything that goes on behind the scenes when you're not there. So why are dentists becoming the punching bags? What have dentists done to self-inflict that? But what are just things that just happen just because that we don't have a solve for at the moment?
So I think a lot of things that I see, and we've talked about, we beat a dead horse with this, but it really boils down to leadership and whether or not you enact that leadership, like in general. From what I see, even some of my clients, I love it when they're like, oh man, they turn it around, they're doing well, they're profiting more than they ever have, they're producing more than they ever have, the team's happy, everything's going well, and they're like, yeah, this is awesome. And then things start to like wane a little bit, and they're like, oh, I know what I need to do, but I don't want to do it. And I'm like, yes, but remember where you were before it started rocking and rolling again, and before when you didn't have reins on the team to be able to perform the way they need to. You need to have those conversations. And I think a lot of, yes, they become the punching bag due to their own inability, or not inability, but lack of wanting to do the hard things. And it is tough and it's not fun, but most of it is self-inflicted because, you're only as good as what you allow. So for instance, if somebody is constantly calling in, putting strain on the rest of the team, and then that person finally starts coming in more, but then other people on the team start abusing that as well, and you're not doing anything about it. Well, that was self-inflicted. It's like, well, because you didn't address it with the one person, now the other team members are doing it, and then it's a problem.
With them, then you're starting to show favoritism.
Right, and then you're just like, and when you address it with maybe the second or third team member that's abusing it now, of, not coming in when they need to, then it's like, well, their excuse is like, well, you didn't address it with the other team member, so like, why is it a problem for me? So then you create the problems. So But on the doctor's side too, they do become a punching bag more and more and more. Not only like because of themselves. A lot of times they have the best of intentions, and this is something I see on the other side, right? So I see on the other side of like my wife is trying so hard to keep everyone happy, and that's a pro and a flaw as well, right?
Yep.
Because you can't keep everyone happy at all times.
No, not at all.
And so you would essentially become the emotional garbage can. Like, you know,
We should
like,
make t-shirts for the podcast.
right. Are you the emotional garbage can? Yeah. Your team's bad days land on your desk, and their personal problems, their drama, their insecurities. Nobody warns you that management is 40% amateur therapy.
Yeah.
And managing other people's emotions.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where I was most surprised, coming back to the original question, where I was most surprised about dentistry in general, coming in as a male in a very female driven practice. Like, I was the only one, but I feel like I was equipped for it because I grew up with a single mom and two sisters. And, I didn't have Nerf guns growing up.
Yeah, Barbie and Ken.
Yeah, like I didn't. I was a very estrogen driven household. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, it just kind of made sense.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you this question because I'm writing notes as you're talking, so I just ask you more questions just to put you in the hot seat. But you said like being nice or allowing things or wanting to do things. What's your take on wanting to do something and because it's the right thing, or even able to do something? Because some of these doctors and dentists aren't quite able with these skills. They haven't developed them yet. And I feel in turn, it brings up the ideology of fear of losing someone. So they're not able to have that conversation mentally because of the fear, and then becomes hard to hire another person. So can we break down the wanting to or actually able to? You're welcome. But I think it's a valid point. I'm not doing this to try and throw Kirk for a loop, guys. What I'm trying to do is really dive into hearing and what we've seen, because a lot of you docs, this is directed straight at you, are not good leaders. And it's nothing personal. It's just the fact that you didn't have training to be a great leader. You had training to be a great dentist. And this is a flaw that I see come through is, how do you have good leadership skills? Also, why being a great clinician, not allowing these things to come through the practice and really empower the team. So break those two down, and then how do we fix that?
Let's start with able. Okay, so the ability and or the skill, which skills are learned, right? So skills are learned. It's a muscle in your brain that you can flex over time and break down and build up. And so let's start from dental school, right? So again, they became great clinicians, hopefully. Yes. They became great clinicians. They're not great business people inherently. Some are, some have had that build up from maybe their parents or their mentors or whatever. But let's just say they come out as a good clinician. They don't have that skill. So now their ability to lead a team after they buy a practice, or even if they're an associate, they still have to lead a team of a hygienist or two and an assistant or a front. Like, they still have a team they need to lead in general. So the ability and skill comes from listening to people who have been there, right? So either listening to podcasts, having a healthy dose of outside information, I think is very important, not just in dental, which is like where your Harvard degree came from, which I'm going to touch on since you flexed, So, you need to be able, I think that was probably initially what we did. Like we got onto every single podcast dental that we could to try to figure out the business side, every single business podcast, every single audio book of like the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, extreme ownership, the go-giver, the compound effect, atomic habits. Like we just went through everything.
Great Barrier Reef.
Yes.
Oh wait, that's a subject.
Right. Bill Nye the Science Guy. All these things. that we got on to really develop that skill quickly and just do as much of a crash course as possible. Honestly, watching The Office was one of my favorite ways to figure out what we needed to do because um and my wife hated The Office, like would not watch it with me, and I'm an avid Office watcher. So she would not watch it, but then when we bought the practice, we started watching it again, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, this is our office." Like so much was relatable, and that's the whole point, is that The Office is exaggerated actual things that happen in an office. And so when we were watching it, she was like, "That is exactly what happened to me this week." you know,
I'm going to pause you there for a minute because you're making a really good, valid point, and it comes down to intentionality. So when you say I'm not able to, you actually are. You just need to shift your priorities of what's important, which Kirk is talking about, like active listening. That's a simple thing that you can train yourself. You don't need somebody to come in and say, open up your freaking ears. If you do, great. I mean, that's kind of sad, but at the same time, like you should be able to say, okay, I'm going to actually focus on what my team is telling me and then ask questions back. And that brings you into the able category because you have intentionality behind it. You care to know. And I think that's one of the biggest parts to your practice growing is you have to, if you want your team to feel and that you care. And we've harped on that many times in different episodes, but you like there's a stark difference between wanting and able. And a lot of times we make able as an excuse because we're not making it a priority.
yeah. Well, and then it comes down to the want, right? So we've got able with intentionality, and or maybe you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So that's where you can hire a coach, get on a podcast, get on a book. Like there's the ability to. It's just you haven't done it yet. Now, and then there's the want. You have the knowledge now,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to use intelligence, which I love what Alex Hormozy did lately, where he placed intelligence as a rate of speed, not knowledge base.
Ah,
So you've got knowledge, but intelligence is the speed of application, right? So if you think about it with emotional intelligence, right? So the ability to take what somebody's giving you in the moment and be able to either show empathy or sympathy for them and use that to then communicate back to them, right? So that's emotional intelligence. So if you use that now of like whether or not they want to do something, going back to my clients, it was like, oh man, I know what I need to do. I have the skill, I did it, but it comes down to whether or not you want to do what it takes to keep it going. Um, and and that's where it's the want of like, man, I just don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, but let's look at what happens if you don't. So I think this is a question that that I would, or not really a question, more of a statement, that when me and my wife would be driving home at the end of the day, a couple years in, she'd be complaining about something that was going on with the team or the office or whatever, and I was just like, okay, cool. You can complain about it as long as you did something about it. It's like either you need to stop complaining or actually do something. It's like, I don't want to hear both.
yeah. I talked to team members that came into my office with an issue without a solution. You're complaining, so I'm not going to listen to you. Even if it's not a good solution, I think this might work. Well, no, let's not work on that. But you're trying to get to resolve. I think that's the big thing. So, which actually you just led me right into my next question, Kirk. All right, what nobody warned you about office drama.
Yeah, nobody warned me about office drama. Uh, and this is where it comes to a want, whether you want to or not. If you don't pour into your culture and you don't nip things in the bud on the front end, then it becomes a much bigger problem and can decimate your team, uh, which we saw firsthand. Um, and it's not fun to go through, but it's definitely a learning moment. When I mean, I had somebody just the other day, not in our office, but another office, that was like, just walked out, just walked out. And in our office, we had somebody just not show up, and we still have her license. Like we don't even know what, like we don't know if she died or like what happened to her, but like she just didn't show up one day. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's odd. Um, but yeah, I mean, office drama is man, it's rampant, and it can be, but that's where you get really good at hiring and firing.
Yeah.
So, like right now, we're hiring two people, and pretty like prominent people in our practice that need to be the driving force of what we're needing. And we can't have a weak person in these positions, knowing what our plan is here this year. So when we're looking at these candidates, if somebody is openly criticizing the previous practice that they were just at, that's a major red flag for me, because when they're doing that, that means that they're also showing their hand, and that's a character flaw, right? Because that means that you're going to be on the other end of that after they leave your practice if they become a problem.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And that's more drama that will be stirred up in your practice, if you do something that they don't like, even if it's justified.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm going to chime in too, because I didn't realize how segregated we've made the dental practice as far as like cliques. Coming in, I wasn't ever warned about that. Like, you've got your group of hygienists kind of hang with each other. You got your assistants, you got your front office team, and then the OM, especially being a male, you're in no man's land, right? And that's the hard part, is not understanding like how that all functions, and how you're just sitting here on your throne, and everybody hates you, but then you got all these cliques that they have this issue, the assistants have this issue, and the front office has this issue. None of them are talking, and they're bad talking about that one up front because they didn't schedule correctly. Like, it affects so much. It affects the patient experience, and it only takes one person, and it will derail the entire team. And I didn't realize how fragile culture and practice can be, right? In destroying what you're trying to build. And a lot of times the owner docs are not aware or care enough to help the OMs dissolve these issues. They're like, oh, well, maybe they had a bad day, or oh, that's just their personality, or they're producers. So once again, goes back into the fear of losing someone. So there's no want to fix it, because that hygienist is much more valuable than a front office team member. So they're just going to let it roll. Whereas I learned very quickly, like you said, to learn to hire quick and to fire quick, to make methodical decisions on who are good fits for the team. And if it's destroying the culture, guess what? You're gone. Like, there's no option.
And it doesn't have to be. I think ways to mitigate that is, like once a quarter doing a team outing, right? Doing lunches all together. There are ways to get around that, even with a large office. So that way they get to know one another and trust each other, especially if you do things like, ropes courses, axe throwing, things that are more physical.
We can know each other.
Yeah. I mean, you get to know each other real quick. uh, and knowing that your team will test you before they trust you.
Yes.
I mean, probably the first 90 days are the most important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily intentional. It's instinctive, of trying to figure out where the boundaries are, right? Which is, again, why it's so important for the doc and or the owner to set the standard and hold people to that standard in the first 90 days. Because otherwise, I mean, that sets the tone for the rest of their employment there.
Yep.
And if you do the hard work in the front end like that, then it makes a massive difference on the back end.
All right, Kirk, I'm going to throw you a softball.
Oh boy.
Make it a little easier on you.
I mean, I don't mind.
This is down your road. And I think you've done a really good job at this, and you figured out good solutions for this. So what nobody warned you about: scheduling chaos.
Yes. Yeah, this is an easy one.
Because for you, but not for most practices, because I
Yeah.
feel like everybody feels like, okay, we go into dentistry, they just book patients on the schedule, you have these slots, and that's just how it works. But
No.
there's so much more to it. So what it looked like before, what systems you put in place,
Sure.
where you found those pain points.
So what we found was the first 6 months, because we bought in September of 2019, so 6 months prior to COVID. So for those 6 months before COVID, it was a production roller coaster. It was all over
Yeah.
the place. You'd have one day that was a $12,000 day. You saw 8 patients, and you're like, "Whoa, yes, every day needs to be this day," right? And then the next day, you see 27 fillings and 30 patients, and you did a $4,000 day, and you're wondering why. Like, why am I even here?
Hmm.
Then COVID happens. And the difference was we sat down and actually looked at our schedule. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to do to actually flow purposefully, intentionally through the schedule with doctor time? So, hygiene schedules are simple. Like, you can get into the weeds on it, but honestly, if you just keep it on the hour, like it's pretty simple. So you can keep it simple. New patients, SRPs, like whatever, not on the hour with SRPs. You get me, but
Yeah.
still, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's simple.
It's a simple
And then you get to
solution.
the
1 hour
doctors,
block marks.
right? So then you get to the doctor, and you're like, okay, so let's fill up high production procedures in one column, fill in the gaps with other restoratives such as fillings and extractions, which is not restorative, but still, you get my drift. And then you have a column of assistant driven procedures, meaning like emergencies, crown seats, partial adjustments, things like that. That are like kind of simple. The doctor time is very minimal. Um, so we looked at that and we're like, okay, cool. So ours started at 8:30. So we were like, okay, my wife is like, okay, if I had a crown at 8:30 and I numbed that patient, and then it would take me this long to come over here, and then this long to come over here, and then I did this, and then I do this. And like in an ideal world, this is what we walked through in our heads
Hmm.
of where she needed to dance in the schedule back and
Yeah.
forth. Then it broke. So basically we built it that way. We maximized it, we broke it, we saw where the bottlenecks were, and then we refined it. We're like, okay, well, maybe this will work better. Maybe moving the emergency from 10 to 10:30, and then we won't go through lunch as much because of when we're hitting that patient in the chair. Like things like that, to where in 4 to 6 months, we really streamlined that schedule to where, I mean, we were doing $14,000 to $16,000 days per doctor very simply and efficiently, to where it's not chaotic. But then I took it a step further. So when I actually got out of the practice a year and a half ago, to where I only went in one time last year, like we talked about, we hired two front office that now I walked away within 2 weeks of hiring those people, and they were building those $16,000 days without really like any craziness. Now, yeah, they had to understand the nuance, and yeah, there were curveball days and stuff because dentistry is crazy like that sometimes. But for the most part, they knew where to put it because I set it up to where it was color coded. And as long as they understood the color to the actual procedure, that's all that had to happen. And they knew exactly where to put it.
So why do you think so many practices have chaos issues?
Well, one, because they're not clear enough on what needs to happen when. So, for instance, of the want to do, back to that adage, um, at the end of the day, they don't go back and say, "Hey, let's look at the schedule. This is what I found where we had a bottleneck, and here's why. Do you see that? Okay, cool." Like, and just like pouring into that front office scheduler of like, "Hey, there was a problem here. Let's try to do this," and asking the question versus telling them like, "Hey, what could we have done different to make sure that doesn't happen?" And then them tell you, then you reinforce it. And anytime you see them do something good, go up there and be like, "Hey, this was awesome. Thank you." Right? Um, so I think it comes back to wanting to do something. So like the doctor really needs to, even if they're an associate, the doctor needs to control their schedule, but they need to go up there and reinforce things when it's good. And then also explain to them why it wasn't good on the back end.
Yeah, it all comes down to systems and communication.
Yeah.
I like to say in a lot of my lectures, I say we've done a really good job in dentistry of creating a ton of problems with zero solutions, and we love to complain about it. And that's really what it comes down to. All right, so we're gonna go on to the last one here, Kirk.
Oh boy.
What no one warned me about being the bad guy.
Oh man. Yeah.
How do you prevent from being the bad guy but still doing what you should be doing? Like, how do you change that viewpoint, right? Because everybody wants to be friends with you until you enforce something, and then they're like, "Oh,
So I'm going to start with your job as a leader is to not be liked, it is to be respected. Um, no, respect comes from being a true leader, and it's not from being liked all the time. So that's the cost of leadership. And I want to read this because, and I tell people this all the time. I will send it to them, and hopefully they favorite it on their phone or whatever. But it's Kirby Smart's Three Costs of Leadership. So do you know who Kirby Smart is?
I don't."
He's the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs in football. Okay.
My favorite
So,
football team.
right. Yeah. Right. So no, I'm a Michigan Wolverine fan. So sorry, any people out there, go blue. But Kirby Smart's Three Costs of Leadership. I love what he says here. So number one, you will have to make hard decisions that negatively affect people you care about.
Yeah.
Number two, you will be disliked despite your best attempts to do the best for the most.
Mm.
And number three, you will be misunderstood and won't always have the opportunity to defend yourself. Those are the three costs of leadership. So, true leadership, right? So, anybody listening to this, and anyone I ever talk to, you may have a lofty goal, but are you willing to do what it takes and or like dish out what it costs to actually get you there or not? And that's okay, right? But you got to know that going in. Here's the cost because here's the expectation, and are you willing to pay it?
What are ways that you can minimize that, like in a practice? Because right, that like those are amazing points. But I do feel like with being a good leader, there are ways that, at least I felt like in our practice, I was definitely the bad guy a lot of times. But I had formed and built relationships with the team members to set those expectations early on, to minimize fallout. But how do you minimize that bad guy feeling, at least with your team, and not so much become friends with them, but like still keep it cordial where they're not just hating to interact with you?
For sure. So again, there's this great story that Simon Sinek talked about where he was at the Four Seasons and he went to go get a coffee, and this guy's name was Noah, and he was like, "Hey Noah, like, do you enjoy your job?" And without missing a beat, Noah was like, "Oh, I love my job. Like, I love it." And Simon was like, "Oh, that's very interesting. Like, in my line of work, like, I need to know, like, why, what about the Four Seasons makes you love your job?" And without a beat, again, Noah was just like, "Look, well, I love the people here. Like, the managers will come by throughout the whole day and ask me, is there anything that I need, or is there anything they can do to help me? And I love it here. But I also work down the road at another hotel." And he was like, "Oh, really? Do you love that job?" He was like, "No, I don't." And obviously Simon asked why, and he was like, "Well, at that other job, you know, I I keep my head down because the managers constantly criticize me. So I just try to stay out of the way, and I don't really enjoy it. But I need the job." And so it was interesting that, what he had talked about is like the interaction with your team makes all the difference, which comes back to culture and how you cultivate your culture. We've talked about multiple times of, having the amount of team members via paper clips in one pocket. And then at the end of the day, like every time that you pour into a team member, you pull a paper clip over into the other pocket. And by the end of the day, hopefully all of those paper clips are in the other pocket. And it's a small thing, but like if you do that every single day, then you're naturally going to build up that culture. and again, that comes back to the want. Whether you want to do it or not, yes, it's tough and it's hard, but what is the hard on the the opposite end? Which is the question I ask all the time. What hard do you want to do? Do you want to stay where you are and choose that hard by having to complain all the time because people aren't performing well and they're already at your throats and there's drama all the time and people just patients aren't happy? Or do you want to choose the hard of pouring into your team, being kind, being okay with maybe people aren't like happy with you all the time, but at least you have had that tough conversation, just a small one on the front end versus it blowing up. And then, things are a lot easier to manage. So back to your original question, you got to choose your hard, but if you have these small conversations, it's a lot easier and people aren't as upset with you. And that's where the respect, I feel like, is really cultivated, not from having critical talks, like criticizing somebody. For instance, like before we got all of our new equipment, we didn't have soft close drawers and doors. So it was not difficult at all to slam a cabinet door. Well, anytime somebody would do that, if a patient's in the chair, it makes them jump, like they get even more anxious, and you don't want that. You don't want to stress them out even more. So, what you can do in that instance is, instead of that person, that team member, oh, they slam that door every single time because they're in a hurry. Oh, well, they left the toilet seat up in the bathroom. Oh, and they came in late for the morning huddle 2 times this week. Oh, and they did. Oh, and they did. Oh, and there's all these little things that build up to where now, oh, they didn't maintain the CEREC machine and now it's needing to $5,000 worth of maintenance. Oh, that's the straw that broke the camel's back, but that's not the actual reason. Had you just had a small conversation of bringing them aside when they slammed the door unintentionally, I might add.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Jane, do you mind not slamming the door? Just be gentle when you close it so that way it doesn't make the patient more anxious. That is a much better conversation than, hey, I'm out a lot of money now. This is a problem. You've been having a lot of problems. I can't take this anymore. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to let you go.
It's all about the approach. And I think where managers struggle is they let the little thing slide till it boils over, and then boom, you address the big thing when what you're saying is hitting it from the early standpoint. So it's like, even if you're like, oh, I need to start doing that. Yeah, start small. Start with the small things and say, hey, I know I haven't addressed this in the past, but it's something that I probably should have. It's not a big deal, but if you could just work on closing those doors a little bit quieter. Some patients have complained. It's, like I said, not a big deal. I want to make sure that you're aware of it, so you know that it's causing some small issues. But I really appreciate you, and I know that you'll be able to handle that for me. Any questions? And then boom, it's just a light, like, hey, you let them know there's complaints, there's issues, but you're not being mean about it, and you're giving them an opportunity rather than like, this is the last time you've been slamming doors all year, and it's like, but you never talked to me about it. It's like, nope, bye. It's impersonal. Yeah. Well, Kirk, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, before you let me go. Yeah. No. I mean, hit the YouTubes, hit subscribe. Make sure you follow me at Kirk Teachout on Instagram and Dental Office Management Leadership Network on Facebook. I got it, man. Domlin got it. No, reach out to us. I know throughout the year we're going to be at a lot of conferences, so make sure to come and hang. See us in real life. Take pictures with us, have a lot of fun. Not for the fame. I mean, Zach's famous, but still, make sure that you come hang with us. We'd love to talk with you, and we'd love to help you in any way.
Well, thanks, guys. This concludes another awesome episode of Management Unfiltered. We'll see you next week.
See you.
Come on, give me some.